And so we are live. Well, this is a recording. My name is Peter Wright. I am here interviewing the most wonderful Megan Frey. She is coming to us, if you're seeing this on your screen, and she's coming to us from California in lucid transparency. I met Megan a few years ago. We were both doing an NLP course with John Grinder, the co-creator of NLP. And I was just, we ended up being on the same teams, and we just resonated at a kind of deep heart level in an NLP world that is run a lot in the mind and has got all different kinds of intentions and influences going on. Megan was the one. She was just there with her playfulness and fun and deep seriousness. Megan is a wonderful, wonderful person. And she is, using the words of Joe Dispenza, she is becoming supernatural. She is just transforming, and I'm so excited to learn more about what is going on. Megan is the founder of Frey Wellness. She is also an NLP coach. She is a health coach. She is a teacher, and she is a coach in many other ways. And I am really so honored because Megan hasn't done many interviews. She will be doing many more. I'm just honored to be one of the first people to interview her and find out more about her. Um, Megan, I delighted to have you here,
Thank
and I'm delighted for this experience and experiment of what not we have this sort of dynamic that it should be one way or another way like an interview. But tell me, Megan, what would you like to tell us today
Well,
about yourself and about your life that's led up to here and what is going on alive inside you?
first, I just want to say thank you for having me and thank you for such a beautiful introduction. Um, Lots of love. Send you lots of love. um, and yeah, the things that I am open to talk to you about today, questions will come, questions will go, questions will be, and perhaps we'll dig kind of deep into the soils and find some roots to talk about. And I look forward in this process as well. Um, so with your question, if you could just ask it one more time of what you would like to hear from, I will do my best.
Yeah, so going down and finding that root, you have many roots that brought you to this tree that you are, this beautiful light being. Um, what was the route that brought you to this moment now, to focusing on wellness as your main thing that your Frey Wellness is, that's your brand right now?
Yeah. Well, I've always had passion for health. I find the human body very fascinating. I find the world fascinating, and I'm full of curiosity, and I want to understand how things come together or go apart or somewhere in between. And I care. I have a lot of love in me, and I look at the body. I look at all bodies as like our best friend, basically, and we have the choice of how we take care of it, and how we take care of that to each is their own, and we all have a relationship within ourselves. I'm not sure who said this quote, but it's one that's been known, and that is um, the longest relationship that you'll ever have is the one with yourself. And it's very true. I mean, we were born into ourselves, and then we die with ourselves, and certain or transform, I would call it. And as I live this cycle of life, I have these moments with myself where I go into a thought, and that thought brings about new little seedlings of other thoughts, of one question to the next, and all these answers come about. And I think a lot of those questions originated in health. And from that, it was like, how does the body heal, and how do we manifest, and how come some people have miracles, how come some people don't, and what about that do we get to manifest and create for ourselves, and how specifically do we do that?
There's a lot there. There's kind of everything in that, the health being one focus. And we met doing NLP, and I'm always curious to know, like, I've been studying NLP for years and I can still not fully explain it. How, when we met during NLP, what would you describe NLP as for some people who don't know anything about NLP?
I would say NLP is
Which is neuro-linguistic programming, just
yeah,
specifically,
right.
not as someone called it, new language programming. There's also some kind of
Mm-hmm.
scientific thing. No, it's not that. Neuro-linguistic programming.
Neuro-linguistic programming, yes, correct. um what would you call that? What
It's
would
a
my
difficult
definition
one. It's just
be,
it.
you know? Well, I think in a nutshell, and I'm going to quote here the person who co-created that, is that the problem's never the problem. The problem is the state that the client goes into as he or she approaches the context where he or she thinks the problem is. And that's a lot. You might want to rewind, play
The
it
problem
again.
is never the problem. So the cancer is not the problem. It's the state we enter into the cancer, or would
Yeah,
that
let's
be?
break that down a little bit, right? So if you were to go on into, that's a big one right there.
Maybe it's a big one. Maybe it's
Well,
more.
you're just gonna go right off the deep end, aren't you?
No, no, no.
Okay, but let's go on a lighter scale, just for the sake of, um, sometimes we have to, when we have the tools to step outside of ourselves without judgment, without criticism, and just observe, we get to observe much more by allowing to look at and to hear what is our pattern. What is our pattern in our relationships? What is our pattern in our minds? What do we tell ourselves every day? How do we talk to ourselves every day? How do we love? And what level do we look for love in the small things? And what level? And when I say love, I'm extending that also to a word that we are familiar with called gratitude. How do we practice this again and again and again? And at the end of the day, if you were to take a scale and put all the times you thought about love and all the times you thought about gratitude, and then you have everything else, what's going to weigh more? And when we're connecting with ourselves and searching on a deep level of how to express and how to communicate more love and more gratitude, we're naturally perhaps going to find more relief and more ease, directing us towards more joy. And from my own personal experiences, I can say that when I'm focusing in those areas, my body responds with ease and relief and with joy. And so from that smaller scale, almost like you're taking apart the little building blocks and you're figuring out, like if I had an atom and it's going around, and I'm like, what makes an atom? And I take all the pieces apart, but then I'm also realizing there's something about these pieces that build momentum, and they're going so fast. They're going so fast that not even my conscious mind can keep up with it. And it's integrating on the subconscious level. And from that subconscious level, it automatically runs. And then I feel the byproduct of that energy. And that energy lives within me. And by stepping out of that and building awareness from it, I'm now more intentful towards the thoughts I think, the energy I give out, and what I'm saying yes to. And finding that contrast, I'm always grateful when I find something I don't want, because I'm that much closer in finding something I do want. An unwanted thought and a wanted thought are equally powerful when given your attention. So the question I always ask myself is, do I want this thought to grow? Because if I do, how can I give it more attention? Do I want this thought to dissipate? Because if I do, how can I then pivot my attention towards something I want more of?
So these thoughts are coming in, and the thoughts are coming, and they're saying, hey, look at me, look at me. I'm there. And like, I don't want more of those thoughts, but they recurrently come back.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's not, there's, in NLP, right? They teach many techniques of how to just throw away these thoughts. But when they come back again and again, don't they have something, a
Well,
message there?
yeah. Okay. So what would you do? Just out of a curiosity. If somebody came up to your door and delivered, I don't know why, but my subconscious, if somebody came up to your door and delivered horse manure every day, and before they delivered it, they would knock and be like, here's your horse manure. And you're like, I don't want that. What are your options that you can do from that?
Well, you could go out and just stop him the minute before he comes in and just say, I don't want the horse manure, and he'll accept that as the answer.
Would
Um,
he?
I reckon it would. I mean, you could get a bit violent with him, maybe bring a stick or something.
So if you were to do that, and if that was a fire, the wood that you're taking and you putting on that fire to grow bigger would be what? What emotion?
And well, a lot of fire, right? More fire, yeah.
So if you were to go to this man and you're like, don't come on my property, don't give me that horse manure, are you feeling joy?
So what you're saying is your thoughts, if you're just pushing them away like aggressively, it's
You're
not useful.
adding,
You're
you're
making them
adding.
worse.
Well, you're putting more of what it is. You're the creator of whatever emotion you have. Those emotions have energy. That energy lives within your body, and you get to create more of that whenever you want. And what's wonderful about emotions is they help us process. However, if we're running the same loop again and 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 again, and we're not outside of it, maybe asking ourselves a question, how is this serving my highest good? And we just run it without awareness. How do you think that would affect us as in our body?
Yeah, it would be quite annoying. It is quite annoying
Okay.
having, yeah. But there are kind of a familiarity with those thoughts.
Hmm. But say the guy kept coming back, kept coming back,
Mhm.
kept coming back, and you realized, I don't want to fight it anymore. I don't want to have this inside of me anymore. In what way would you redirect that energy?
I I don't know.
Okay. So let's think about like the manure for a second. What is manure good for?
It's great for growing crops.
Okay.
Great for the garden,
Mm-hmm.
for growing plants.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Um, burning can burn it.
Okay. Okay. So you gave yourself some options of possibilities.
Mm.
And then what would happen if you accepted that manure and you gave it to your garden? You gave it to grow crops, or you gave it to compost to burn. What would you feel with your emotions then?
Yeah, you'd see the plants growing, and yeah, great.
Would that bring you joy?
Are we doing a coaching session now?
No, no. I'm just
Megan,
doing a metaphor of an example of what NLP did off of the original conversation of what you were asking me, what it meant, how would I define it? And then this is how I'm defining it. From the problem's never the problem. The problem is the state that the person enters the context
aha.
as as the person enters the context to where he or she thinks the problem is.
So tell us, as like we're coaches here, right? And
Mhm.
you've explained this to us, and with when is it that people need to go and see you, and why can't they just do it themselves? Do this themselves? Why
Yeah,
they've got
they
all
can.
the books and NLP, they can do it.
Okay, so I could probably answer this from Albert Einstein's quote. The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. That's it. Simply it. Once you learn the tools, they're yours. And I believe in that. I believe in teaching the tools so you can operate as an individual, not so you can keep coming back to me. It's only a matter of time before you can model what it is that's being taught to you. And that's up to you. That's up to how you process. That's up to the questions you ask. That's up to your level of curiosity. To each his their own.
Yeah, yeah. So you have people coming to you, your clients, and what are they looking for?
Relief.
Mm. They want to fix this problem that they have. Um, what like do you see that the role of the coach, um, where do you see that role in terms of, right, you have all this huge wealth of knowledge, you've been learning this for so many years, and you've also got this in-depth experience, um, and yet people can find their way on their own. Um, what is
Rightfully
it?
so. It's like I think of it like everybody is their own captain in life, whether they know it or whether they don't know it. So you're either going to wake them up to that thought, perhaps. I mean, if they want to awaken, it's the other thing. If they don't, they're not going to, well, they're probably not going to seek you out anyhow. But really, just a co-pilot. I'm looking at numbers, I'm looking at data, I'm asking, and then I'm giving feedback, and I'm giving, like we explore options together. It's like, what would happen if you opened this door? Or what would happen if you flew over here? Or and then I'm like, hey, here's the weather report. Hey, here's this going on. Hey, here's that. What do you want to do? Because it's nobody knows best but you. It's your life. It's what you're here to work on. It's what you're here to do. And sometimes, and even in my own personal experience, I've had amazing friends ask me some amazing questions that got to the truth of what I was seeking within myself.
Mm, yeah, I really find at this moment, this time, things are just accelerating in so many ways. I don't know how you're finding that, but just
Yeah.
these connections are being made that we're just connecting all of these skills and gifts, but there'll be somebody out there. I've met people who I would have, if before, have filters on my mind. It's like, oh, this person is very close-minded. And then there's some insight from them that's just like, wow. And they're curious. And people are getting more curious to what it is you do, what it is we do. It's like, it is naturally, there's no need, that there's getting less and less a need to sell and market it, because I just find that that's what is happening right now in the way we do things. Because before, in the world of NLP, for example, it was a lot about ego, and there's so much marketing and selling of what it is, and like you're just, you could be selling yourself so much. You could be out there on the airways. You're in California right now, and you could be going on those infomercials and say, "Hey guys, what, you can transform your life. You can open up all the possibilities, but you're going in a different way. You're really going a way that's just intuitive and trusting. What you've always said to me, you're always trusting in what's happening in the process."
I really believe in finding your passion, doing what brings you most joy, and then making a career out of that. And everything else is a byproduct. It brings me joy to do what I do. And I want to attract that. But I can do that through word of mouth. By having experience with someone and the experience that they have, if I hold myself to that of which I give to myself, and I take all of that, and that's my foundation of how I give to others, through questions, through thoughtfulness. It's not like the things that I'm doing, I do for myself first. I am walking my own walk. And then when another comes to me, it's as if it's a part of me. And I give it just that level of love and compassion and empathy and curiosity. Just the other day, I had someone who called me up, and I was crossing paths. She's not a client, but she called me up for advice on a relationship. And she goes, well, and I wasn't really telling her what to do, because it's not my life. I'm here to listen, and I can ask you questions. And then she got kind of clever, and she said, well, what would you do if you were me? And what I told her was, I would ask myself 4 questions, and I would write them down. And I would let those questions be what I sat with to weigh my decision and to help me see what I want. And then I could hear it too by reading the words out loud. And that's what I would do if it were me. You got to find your own way. Nobody knows best but you, always. But if you don't give your attention to yourself, how will you ever figure out what that best is if you keep on asking something outside of you?
Yeah, that's it. At the same time, we're listening to you, and we're listening to these wise people, and I mean, they show that they're wise anyway.
My dad would always say, with big eyes, and then I give him big eyes back, and he'd say, don't get wise, bubble eyes.
Get wise. You sound
Don't
very
get,
wise. You sound
don't get
very
wise,
wise.
bubble eyes.
Now we have to get you be like doing
And then
wise.
I say, look at my thumb. Gee, you're dumb.
Yeah, I thought this thing was getting very serious. Of course, there is a persona of the way you would be perceived.
Yeah.
Somehow, right? Well, I'm thinking that because it's like, oh, we're doing a formal interview, and um, who are you talking to? Who am I talking to? It's just ridiculous, because it's in my mind of like, there's a certain way to do things, and there's a certain way to talk and to use words and so on.
Where
And
did where did you learn that from?
oh, we from the media, right? From modeling, um,
Okay.
modeling those, I guess, that were impressive, looked impressive, and that's at
Uh-huh.
the heart of NLP. Is this modeling thing,
So
and
they looked impressive. Did they feel impressive?
yeah, they just looked the part and they talked the part, and like, oh, that's an impressive person right there.
So they looked and sounded impressive.
Yeah, they looked and sounded impressive, and there was a time when I was very impressed by that, and I'm still in the bit of that, still there, still kind of a want to be some kind of role, a character that's I don't want to be the fool, but um the
What would happen if you were the fool?
well, that's the great experiment of just coming out and being
Isn't
like,
that
oh,
it's
I don't.
like sorry.
And you did this all the time. You did this when we first met. You were the fool, the fool, the fool. And now you're all serious and like you're very impressive right now. You've changed.
Or maybe it just allowed.
Mm. Allow. Yes. It's improvisation of improvising what's going to come next, because there's a set format of something, have people having questions and having thoughts in their head, um and as if this is going to be for someone, and like, no, the thing is, there's so much stuff out there. There's billions of stuff of blah 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 blah, and people don't have attention spans to even follow any of it. They're
Oh
just
yeah.
getting less and less attention spans um to follow this. We are talking to ourselves really when it comes to, firstly, when we were talking, and how, when like this came up about like how I like to be perceived, and it's like, do I want to be perceived as somebody else, as a character, a role, or would I like to just be more something that's me?
What is me?
Me is a 5-year-old me, maybe a 5-year-old me who also has intentions. I don't think 5-year-olds have intentions. We are learning drama at the moment. I'm doing this Midsummer Night's Dream, and in the Shakespeare lines, every word in it, every sentence has an intention, and so we're finding out the intentions in every sentence that's being made. But in a 5-year-old doesn't have intentions. They
Says
they're
who?
huh? Oh,
Says
that's a good question. Um, says says the idea that they are just still in the form of like an animal. And an animal, I guess an animal has intentions, do they? When every communication, they have an intention. There's a meaning. There's
I
not a
mean,
meaning, not there's an intention. It's like they don't do things without an intention. They want to get something, or they're saying something to, there's always an intention behind it.
if an infant is sleeping and then he wakes up and he starts to cry, do you think he has an intention?
Of course, yeah. And so we always have intentions, but like then we just fill it all with blah blah blah, with noise and words. And like in the
Who's
Shakespeare
we?
lines that we're doing, what?
Who's we?
Oh, that's a good question. Those people out there who talk a lot. Yeah. Not me, of course. I always very precise with my wordage and all that.
That's the practice, right?
The practice of becoming more shorter with the intention not to fill the air with just unintentioned words.
I
That,
mean, some do that. Some definitely.
mm,
That some could be a we. It's a possibility. Only if it feels good, right? Or wrong, or left, or up or down.
yeah.
To each is their own. Only you know what that feeling is, and if you want more of it. Only you know when you're ready to let that feeling go and have less of it or none of it. And again, I will even question the feelings within myself. What is this feeling telling me? What am I learning from this feeling? And how does it serve me? Sometimes I get feelings and it's more of like a signal of an alert. And it's saying this feeling needs to be serviced for the purpose of my health, for the purpose of my well-being, for the purpose of relief. And then sometimes I have to process it. Sometimes I don't even have to have a logical explanation of how to process it. It's all in the subconscious. And it comes to me in my mind's eye as a silly story, just so I can touch that feeling. Because when I touch it, I process it. When I give space and I hold space, and when I hold space, it's without judgment and criticism. It's just to simply hold it and to process it. It's almost like you're watching a movie, one that's super intense, and right at the very apex of that intensity, it gets turned off. You think your mind would go back to it and think what would happen, what would happen, what would happen, what would happen, what would happen. And then we run that loop again and again and again and again and again. But if we go back to that intensity at that apex, turn that TV back on and just watch it, and just watch it without judgment, without criticism, perhaps with curiosity, and let it run its course. And then there's an end, just like there was a beginning. And then you're like, okay, that can go in the archive. Or it can even go past an archive. It can go straight into the sun and just burn if it's not that important. Or even if it was important.
What would you say right now to anyone going through a very dark time? Because it's been very demanding the last few years. A lot of things coming up and a lot of, well, with the system that's showing all of itself, and there are people who are struggling, really struggling in this time of with a world out there that is changing and going in a worrying direction, um and yet for me I see so much hope there, but for people who don't know that it's out there, or yeah, what would you say to that, or do anything?
First thing that comes to my mind is creativity. I once read this book, Man Searches for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and he was a Holocaust survivor. And he is also a psychologist. And it was incredible what he went through and how many times he almost died and didn't, and persevered. He wrote the whole story on toilet paper roll. And the one thing that stuck in my mind is he said, even though I'm a prisoner, my mind is free, but I don't have freedom to my autonomy of my exterior. But all these prison guards, they don't have autonomy to their mind, but they have autonomy to all of their exterior.
And if the exact opposite of this situation with someone who has everything, they have everything they ever wanted, and yet they're getting all of these feelings of, well, going to lose this, or just whatever that's going on, because we're living in such an abundance right now, and yet there's that
An abundance of what?
an abundance of physical material things, and now it's coming to a
But
kind of
haven't we always lived in abundance of physical things? We've just traded thought of the value from one physical item to another. I mean, if we were to strip all the Wi-Fi, all the technology, all of that away, we'd still have the essentials of this earth and that of which we need to live. And then we created something more. But it doesn't mean we have to have it to live. Everything we need is already here. It always has been. We just kind of created perhaps a system of supply and demand. And then from that came more illusions of what we think we might need.
So what do we need right now, Megan?
Something that we all have,
What's that?
a heart.
Great, a physical heart and lungs and teeth and eyes.
And also the energy that expands through our hearts when we connect. Focusing there, expanding and growing even more, that energy source within all of us. And choosing to see the light within me as the light within you. And recognizing it and honoring it. And that's my personal opinion. And we can all have different variations of that. Because we live in a beautiful world of contrast. And maybe I wouldn't be in the position I am now if I didn't have all of the experiences of what I had then. For me to find that contrast, to know with uncertainty of a little bit of certainty of that I which I focus on now. And that comes a lot from my heart. My mind gets ideas. My mind is a beautiful tool. My heart is my compass. You know how you have executors and chief executors, and one person has to talk to the other person before they can move forward. Well, those two are always communicating. Some people say always, and I'm going to say always. And I am human, so I really can't say always, but I'm going to do my best. I do my best.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you, Megan. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Peter.
And your being, and so much learning. So Frey Wellness is there. I mean, I'm starting doing a coaching session with you, so it's a good opportunity to work with someone wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.